We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
Many years I had accumulated a shoulder injury due to lifting heavy weights back then. You know, this was in high school. And it's kind of interesting because recently this injury's been bothering me for many years. And recently, 2018, my brother, Dr. Boz Moreno, has suggested that I take some of his B Venom, a homeopathic solution he put together. And I was like, yeah, let me try it. Let me see what's up. At first, I was kind of skeptical to the situation, but then at the same time, with its track record, I was like, yeah, he be putting it down when it comes to homeopathic medicines and whatnot, you know, due to the history we have with each other and whatnot. So I was like, yeah, let me get some. So I end up ordering some, read the instructions, what I need to do, how much I need to illustrate within or add to my body or whatever the case may be. So over a 2-month period, I took it. I took injections from every Tuesday, so 4 times a week, 4 times a month. So I took it for 2 months, and after the second month, I noticed that my arm was not hurting anymore. The muscle had repaired itself, literally, you know, and I was like, whoa, let me start sharing this with people, you know, really start giving them an opportunity to check out what's actually involved with B Venom. So tune in. We definitely got some more exciting things. If you're interested in administrating some B Venom, check out our advertisement that we have that's supporting this podcast.
This is Techno-Thusiasts, Seattle's premier geek podcast network.
The German news agency.
We interrupt this program to bring you a news bulletin from Washington. The White House has just announced.
Here is a news bulletin. Shots have reportedly been fired.
Here's another late development, and this news keeps coming in.
This is an NBC News hotline report.
Special report. Verdicts, violence. National Guard troops.
We interrupt our program to bring you a special broadcast.
We interrupt this broadcast.
We interrupt this broadcast to bring you this important...
Hotep, and welcome to My Sovereign World, where you can find discuss issues on self-empowerment, meditation, self-sustainability living, autonomy, sovereignty, divine law, legalese, and other related issues.
Hotep, welcome to My Sovereign World, episode 65. I am that I am. Some call me Haru, with my co-host.
Namaskar, me Nas, or Ruwap. Either one's fine.
Yes, indeed. So we just wanted to conversate, talk to you a little bit, and talk to amongst ourselves as well.
Right.
But just wanted to talk about some issues, kind of get some perspectives out there, maybe some thoughts, some thinking and whatnot, so we could jump right into it, bro.
Oh yeah, let's do that. Let's first thing as always, let's talk about one of the things that we have that's so entrenched in us that it is actually a disease that we really need to focus on getting out, separating ourselves from, and that is fear. We were just talking about that and how fear is a disease, and as beings that do still fall within that animal class, we have to realize that everything serves a purpose, and even fear serves a purpose to us as animals, and that is we need to survive. So if your life is in danger, let's say you're walking down the street and you see a car coming, and you get a rush of adrenaline, you get fear in your eyes, that needs to prepare your body to be able to get out of the way, to use the reflexes, the muscles that it can use, that it has access to be able to get out of the way. If you're a deer, or if we're talking about a deer that's, run up on
Standing
by a
in front
mountain
of
lion or something to that case, then
Yeah, sure.
fear is absolutely necessary for you to be able to get out of that situation and so for you to live. But you have to realize what the instance, or not even just the instance, but the ongoing instance or the ongoing moments of fear actually cause on your body. And it's just like, I know there's a lot of science fiction fans out. So imagine, Enterprise, Star Trek. And when the Klingons or, whoever that they were enemies with at the time would attack, and they would divert all energy to shields and weapons.
Sure.
Right? So they would sacrifice certain areas of the ship for life support, so the people would have to get out of those particular areas. It would sacrifice whatever propulsions or what's the warp drive engines or whatever the case is, and your body does the same thing. When you need to survive and get out of a situation, and your body realizes that, it starts a systematic a set of systematic responses that actually prepares your body for that, like fight or flight. For example, we know that cholesterol is bad for the arteries and can clog up our the blood flow. It can cause heart attacks. It can cause stress on the heart and cause heart attacks. But one of the things we need to realize is that the instance of fear, the body produces a lot of what is called, I believe, cortisol. And what happens then is the body lubricates itself in preparing to fight or flight. Okay, but it's the body is initiated creating so much of it that in a normal situation, all that cortisol is bad for you. Or cholesterol, if you want to, bottom line word, too much, it's bad for you. So when you continuously live in that situation, fear after another fear, and your body can't, not only produces it, but it can't get rid of it at the same pace, then that means that you're creating untold damages to your body. Not just an aspect, but you're also talking about the stress that fear causes, and stress literally kills. I mean,
indeed.
Right. It takes it damages nerve endings. It damages your DNA, the endings to your DNA. It also damages cannabinoid receptors in your brain. It does various of things. It increases your blood pressure, which all attributes to a quicker death, if you want to call it, or more time off your life. And I don't think
that's what it is, and we see a lot of that going on right now, 24/7.
And the reason that we bring this up is because this is what people are doing to themselves every day. That we fear we can't pay a bill. We fear that we're going to lose a job. We fear we can't get a job. I don't have enough gas to get here, so what am I going to do? And we stress about things that are really should be small things to a giant. Imagine
it is.
In our perspective of where we are, or our situation where we are in the universe, or even in this world, we have to realize that when you put it in proper perspective, and you look at who you truly are, and you realize who you truly are, spiritually, mentally, physically, you are stressing out every time an ant walks up into your presence.
That ant, and that ant be making his presence, don't he?
Yeah, he does. And people, some people are going to dismiss this and say, you know what, I don't, I may, stress or a little concerned or think about my problems a little bit so that I can overcome them, but I don't let them overcome me. And I'm gonna tell you that's not true. You're belittling the situation. Yes, you do. We have all kinds of phobias. How many people are scared of spiders just to be scared of spiders? It could be a simple whatever. Yeah, it could be a simple house spider, daddy long leg, or people are scared of snakes. Those are called phobias, and we don't tend to associate it with fear. But what do you think phobia means? Phobia means fear, something you're afraid of. Some people are afraid of heights. Man, I'm not afraid of heights. I'm afraid of the fall.
Yeah,
You
that's
know what I'm
about
saying?
it. That's about
And it's
it.
that, I can't be afraid of that, because once I hit, hopefully I won't feel it anymore. I won't survive and be
I
mangled,
hope
and stuff
not.
like that. You get my point. But to be honest, I don't remember who made the quote. Fear, there's nothing to fear but fear itself.
I don't know.
I don't
I know
remember
it's out
right
there.
off the top of my head, but that's one of the most profound, um, most simplistic, profound statements that exist. Excuse me.
Oh, I know who it was. Eisenhower.
Eisenhower. Okay.
It was Eisenhower, one of them presidents,
Yeah.
who
And
mentioned it.
and I'm sure he got it from a sage, but that's
Yeah.
absolutely true.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's people who fear public speaking, and I've done public speaking a lot, and I did used to have that, and I used to I found ways to overcome it. Now, I'm in a different place, so things like that don't cause phobia, fear, because what's gonna happen if you go up there and so what? Let's say you go up on stage and you get booed.
Yeah, I know, and that happened.
Yeah, so you still breathe, go get some water, go get some food, go make love to your woman or your man or whatever it is you're gonna do, and live your life. So what you go up and get booed, so people don't agree with you.
Everybody started there.
Yeah,
Even Michael Jackson.
Right. But the point is
that
before we get into it any further, that's what I wanted to kind of bring out, is that people have to recognize that fear is a disease. It is a disease of the soul when it is not used and properly, when it is not used as the tool that it was provided as, and used properly. And right now, the type of sophisticated society that we live in, it induces fears and phobias. And unfortunately, that causes stress that's killing us. And when I say it's killing us, it's not just taking your life away, but it's also taking your rationale to deal with life. Because remember, if you're stressing it and it's killing your, parts of your brain functionality, then it's taking your rationale along with it, or at least your full capability of rationale and intellectual prowess.
Yeah, no doubt. And it's like I always usually say, when you overcome the fear, then you don't have nothing to fear anyway. Whatever you are fearing, just understand it, get a more grasp of it, then you won't fear it anymore.
And then that you get into a key point. The reason that we fear things is because we don't understand them.
Exactly.
The saying that we are, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Yeah. That's not just a nice little pretty cutesy saying. That's actually true.
Yeah.
What you don't, we fear mostly what we don't know.
Exactly.
And
superstition.
Oh yeah. Superstition is a big thing.
Sawed over like I was telling you my story with my mother. I was walking with my mother, and she was talking about splitting poles. So every pole I see, every pole I was going, I just was splitting them. Boom. Yeah. Just boom, boom, and that superstition is just, ooh man, what is and when you really think about it, nobody looks into these superstitions. You know what I'm saying? Nobody really look and do the history on them.
Right,
that's the crazy thing, or do the research or whatever the case may be.
Indeed. Indeed, and it's funny because I grew up with people that had that same superstition. First time I ever heard of it, I was 14 years old, I think, and the girl I was with, the young lady at the time that I was dating, is like, don't split the pole. I'm like, what are you talking about? Don't split the pole. Why? So she said, that's going to be bad luck. We might end up breaking up. You know what? Us breaking up ain't have nothing to do with that pole. But anyway, so we want to get into a couple of things here real quick to kind of facilitate people's understanding of things. Let's talk a little bit about the Federal Reserve notes. Or I guess banking in a sense. One of the things about banking that people don't comprehend is that they tend to believe that banks are there to store your money, things that you put in there, whatever it is you put into the account, it belongs to you, and you're there and they're there to facilitate you. And unfortunately, and there are other people, the flip side of that coin, other people that believe that no, the bank is an instrument all its own, or of the government, that you're acting as the authorized agent, and they are facilitating a corporate account that just has a simultaneous representation of your name in all caps or whatever the case is. And then actually, the truth of the matter is it falls somewhere in between. It is true that when you put something into a bank that you actually have gotten into agreement that they are going to service something for you, provide a service for you, but they're servicing something for you as an authorized agent of the account. Now, what does that mean? People don't realize what the word authorized agent. Well, before we actually get into what authorized agent means, let me show you where you can find that you actually are an authorized agent. Pull out one of your checks that you use for, for transactions to write things on an account, on a bank account, and look at the signatory line. And if you look at that signatory line really close, you'll see that it's actually not a solid line, that it's actually little symbols. And those symbols happen to be letters. And it says all the way across, authorized agent, authorized agent, authorized agent, all the way across. Okay? Now, I've heard one banker out of many that could not explain it try and say, well, what this is a security, a deal to help the security so that anybody that wants to counterfeit checks or create their own checks, that this is just to show that it's just a security measure. And let me tell you something. You can put asterisks all the way across. You can put L's or any other letter, symbol, or anything that you want all the way across, and that will be a simple a security measure. You can do watermarks. Anyway, the point is, it is not just a security measure. You don't put authorized agent and say, okay, well, this is a security measure, because it means something that attaches. That's the signatory line where you authorize the transaction to go through that account. Well, what people also don't realize is that this is one thing that the IRS uses to determine if you are required to pay an income tax. Have you used checks off to that account? When you do receive checks, how are you depositing them into the account, and what are you converting them to? They are able to define your use of Federal Reserve notes or federal credits as income. Okay, and then there are many people who also believe that there are that the redemption clauses were taken off and taken away from us, so that we could not redeem Federal Reserve notes, and that's not true. It was taken off of the Federal Reserve note, but that's because they knew most people wouldn't read law, wouldn't go into looking at it. So if it's not something that's put in your face, put in front of you, most people don't, thinks it doesn't exist. The only reason that a lot of people believe China exists is because we see a lot of people from China, and people talk about it all the time, and it's on the news and so forth. But if something is, what I'm basically saying here is that if something's not in front of someone's face, many people, unless they stumble onto it, will never find it, because they don't go look for it. And if you actually go look up Title 12, United States Code, Section 411 or 411, I'll read it to you. It actually says, Federal Reserve notes to be issued at the discretion of the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System for the purpose of making advances to Federal Reserve banks through the Federal Reserve agents as hereinafter set forth, and for no other purpose are authorized. Now, I'm going to segue right there. I'm going to stop right there real quick. Excuse me. Who did they say it was for? Making advances to Federal Reserve banks through the Federal Reserve agents as hereinafter set forth, and for no other purpose as authorized. Then it goes on to say that the said notes shall be obligations of the United States and shall be receivable by all national and member banks and Federal Reserve banks, and for all taxes, customs, and other public dues. They shall be redeemed in lawful money on demand at the Treasury Department of the United States in the City of Washington, District of Columbia, or at any Federal Reserve bank. Interesting. Now, Federal Reserve notes are obligations of the United States. Now, you being a United States citizen that holds a Social Security number, that holds actually a job of employment, which is actually a political subdivision of the corporate state that it was registered in, which is a political subdivision of the federal corporation, and not the de jure state, which is a fact, makes you in fact an employee, or i.e. servant, of that specific political subdivision. And if the boss is the servant of the boss, is the servant of the big boss, is the servant of the bigger boss, which is the servant to the biggest boss, that means all of those bosses up underneath, regardless of their specific title, are subsidiaries or subservient to the hierarchy of bosses, all leading up, all the way up to the central or the principal, which in this case we're talking the federal U.S. Corporation, all right, from the political subdivisions. And if you look up the word employee, it does mean servant. I am not making this up. Okay,
you said that on the last.
Yes,
I mean, you can look at our last.
And attaching yourself to that Social Security number, I'm going to tell you, flip the Social Security card over and look at the back. It doesn't belong to you. The moment that they ask for it, or if it's lost or stolen or whatever the case is, then it's to be returned to a specific address. It does not belong to you. And if you think you can get a Social Security number issued without a Social Security card, I suggest you try it, and I will be here. I'm here to tell you it will not happen. Okay? All right.
Let me put this out there. I mean, just on that thought, I just wanted to just give a shout out to all the veterans. Since we are talking on Veterans Day, I just want to give a shout out to all the veterans. Much respect for y'all doing y'all thing. But we definitely talking about some issues that's actually going to uncover what these veterans were actually fighting for.
Yeah, indeed. And this is the one thing that as a vet myself, this is important. These are things that I want to know, because I want to know why I'm thinking, why I believed that when I was 19 years old going into the military, that I was fighting for one thing, when in actuality I come to find out that I'm actually fighting for something else. Now, let's not get this twisted. The U.S. military makes it is one of the main reasons why the United States has never been suffered an inland invasion, but it is not the only reason. It is a major reason, but it's not the only reason. The major reason why we've never experienced an on-land invasion is because of the population of the guns within the population of the U.S. But by all means, we don't. There's actually to be honest with you, there's somewhat of a conflict, because I'll tell you this: I don't support the mission that is being put forth, and that the militaries are being used for it to expand this empire that we have, or the interest of certain principles in this world, when in fact the military, U.S. military, is supposed to be used for protecting the freedoms of the people of the United States of America.
Yes.
And unfortunately, that's being convoluted. People are using that premise to maintain our loyalty to our veterans and our military members, but they are taking advantage of us. And I want to be clear on that. It's like, look, I don't have a problem supporting people, that are honorable and loyal, but I do have a problem with supporting a mission that I know is nonsensical. And is repugnant to what we actually stand for. How are we going to stand for freedom? Yeah, how are we going to stand for liberty and freedom and then subject someone else? And I'm not saying that that's what the case is in every scenario, but sometimes we got to think. We really have to use our minds, our mental facilities to figure out what's going on. What are we being used for?
Yeah, and that's what I was saying earlier about how we are disconnected. We're disconnected from ourselves, so therefore we're disconnected from everybody.
Right.
I mean, even with family. I mean, we don't even when the family unit is not really there, and then they're showing us with these how your family should be with Tony Braxton values, the Braxton family value. But I'm just using that as an example.
Right.
You got these sporadic. These pools of social group classes that's living a lifestyle that people the average person wouldn't even have that lifestyle.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, right.
So it's crazy, man. It's crazy, and then we using these as standards. Oh, this is my value. This is how I gotta do it now because I'm looking at this or whatever. You know how folks are.
Right.
Or how they can get.
No, I get you. I'm not familiar with the. I don't watch TV.
Yeah, but
I get the concept.
Like I said, I browse. I browse. I mean, I'm looking for information because most of the time I'm looking on this TV show. I'm looking at Pawn Stars or Top Shot,
right.
or some issues on what I can learn. That's usually when I'm on it.
Well,
if
in that
TV.
case, you actually provide a perfect caveat to segue here. That the whole thing about there's things surrounding us in life to teach us certain things, and a lot of times we miss those lessons because we don't realize what it is that's presented itself before us.
Mm-hmm.
For example, like when we come on here and we talk to you about Federal Reserve notes, for example, the IRS and traffic, or foreclosures, dealing with any of those things, we think that our rights and stuff are being taken away from us, and I'm here to tell you that, yeah, certain people's rights or privileges are being restricted, but if you know how to stand up for your rights, if you know the proper way, the basic fundamentals, the basic foundation of liberty, if you want to call it, and you actually have a free will spirit, or a free spirit, there's nobody that can subjugate you. Even if they put you in chains, they can't subjugate you until you lose that fire. But what you have to be able to stand on it. Again, we talk traffic, for example, and we continuously tell people that, or ask people, well, how are lawsuits started? First of all, are you under a criminal situation, or are you under a civil? Well, and they tell us, well, this is a civil situation, and so how are civil, by law, how are civil complaints started? Civil complaints are started by a summons and complaint, and once a summons and complaint is issued, then you respond to a specific court, whether or not determining whether or not it has jurisdiction, whether or not there's various other issues, and if they don't have jurisdiction, you challenge that. If the plaintiff is not doesn't handle things or provide things technically properly. In other words, if they issue you an instrument, saying that you're guilty of something without taking you through due process, or issuing a summons and a complaint, then that's a violation of your due process, your right to due process. There's nothing, even by the Patriot Act, that has overcome your right to due process. We were in a situation the day before yesterday where one of the houses that we have, and the house that I have in California, a partner that I'm working with, had to discuss something with a tenant and a police officer who recently moved out, and she was concerned, and about the police making her, compelling her to do something. And I said, you merely ask that police officer one question. If he says that you have to do anything in accordance with what you are claiming is your property, which is our property, you ask him one question, and that question is, are you currently seizing my property? And the minute he says yes, you compel him to give you his authority to do so. If he's got a warrant, if there's, what's the issue? What is it that he's using to, and then you use that against him. Don't try and deal with it right then and there. He's got a gun. Don't, say, no, you're not coming over here, blah, blah, blah. Because we don't have any interest. We don't care about him. Fine, if he goes on and he seizes our property, you know what? We'll deal with him in the proper context afterwards, because in some cases you can't sue the state. The state has alleged immunity from being sued, but that officer doesn't.
Indeed.
That officer himself directly, and his bond does not. You sue him because, remember, we've already previously talked about this. What was it, 18242? Was it?
Yeah.
Under
42, 241.
A violation of rights under color of statute. I mean, that's perfect. I mean, are you serious? You sure you want to do this? That's why I say you ask them a question, and when you start asking questions instead of blabbering off at the mouth, then they get real cautious, because you worry about somebody. If you ever have a room full of big mouths and everybody doesn't want to get their word out and stuff like that, you don't really worry about the one with the biggest mouth. You worry about the one that's sitting there, that's observing everything, that's calm, cool, collective, and just absorbing everything and just asking questions. I'm like,
and
okay,
what do
wait a
you
minute,
have? What are you
me?
thinking
Yeah,
about?
what do you think? Yeah, then you get concerned because you don't know. Remember, when we started this show by saying we fear what we don't understand. Well, we don't understand why everybody's being loudmouthed in here, and he's the one sitting there, he or she's being there calm, cool, collective, and asking simple questions, and we don't know where those questions are leading to. You know, so police know, they realize that they have a certain authority up to a certain point, and if they have a certain authority from a certain point up to a certain point, and if you establish yourself within those points, then they have authority over you. The moment that you show that they have authority over you is the moment that they take it.
Incompetence.
All right.
Yeah.
Now there are some officers who will overstep their bounds. But let me jump back to the traffic here real quick. For example, so you have a executive officer who has written you a ticket or an instrument to compel you to show up to a judicial hearing. Now, what do we know about checks and balances?
They have to be
The separation of powers.
Separation of powers.
I mean, if you don't know, ask a judge. Ask them when you come in, say, or don't go in, or when you write the letter, or the case is.
Sure.
If is that officer a complainant? And if he's a complainant, then that means he's not sitting as an executive officer, and he shouldn't be coming into court in his uniform. He should be coming there as a civil complaint, or a civil citizen complaining as a citizen. Right? I mean, we can go on and on and on and on. I mean, are you required to register your private property? A lot of people will say yes. Okay, we'll go ahead and do it. Am I required to register my private property? No, I'm not. No, I'm not. My property is used as a house, considered a household good, and government cannot compel me with the saving the suitors clause or any type of commercial clause to compel me to register my vehicle or my private property.
It's crazy because, I mean, you saying that too, and people look at that like, this dude is crazy. The crazy thing about it is, like, it's right there in your statutes or in their so-called state statutes or whatever you want to go with it. I mean, the codes or whatever they call it. I don't know what they call it in your state, but you can literally go in your state and start reading these things.
Well, yeah.
I mean, it's real simple. That's the crazy thing.
Well, before you even get into reading law, don't go and read any statute yet until you read the Declaration of Independence. Read the U.S. Constitution, and I know people say, hey, there's now a de facto secondary constitution that's affected, that is attributed to the federal corporation, and that's all fine and dandy, but I dare you or anyone else to try and go and prove into court that this is a secondary constitution. They're going to lock you up for incompetency, regardless of how true it is, okay? Because they don't recognize the one that you're dealing with, the de jure. They recognize what's before them, and that's all they're going to recognize. So use the tools that you have before you. So what I would suggest that you do is read the Declaration of Independence, have a copy of the Constitution, read it. It's not that long, but also grab your enabling act of the state that you are in. That is very, very important.
And some of them don't have them. I just want to caution people so they won't be, thinking, well, this state don't have it. I forgot the main states that don't have it.
13
I mean,
states.
the 13 colonies,
But they were brought under. They were brought under with the Bill of Rights and federal. What was it called? The Confederate.
Articles of Confederation.
Yeah, Articles of Confederation. Articles of Confederation and the Bill of Rights. So it's not that they don't. They still have a form of government that they're required to follow as well. And remember, the original 13 states were created directly under the principles of the Declaration of Independence and the U.S. Constitution. That is why the 14th state and beyond have enabling acts that each of them state specifically that you are to create a government that is not repugnant to the Declaration of Independence specifically, as well as the U.S. Constitution specifically. It specifically states those things in there. And this is why. So even if you're in one of the original 13 states, though you don't have an enabling act, you still have the enabling principle, which is the Declaration of Independence and U.S. Constitution. All right. And yes, I think I've already stated this before too. I've had an attorney tell me that the Declaration of Independence is not a legal contract, a legally binding contract, and I'm like, yes, it is. It may indirectly because nobody actually took an oath to it, but the Enabling Act references and says that you are not to create a constitution or government repugnant of its principles. So yes, it is legally binding. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
For example, let's go to foreclosures. Foreclosures, and believe me, foreclosures are going to start ramping up again. Believe me when I tell you, they're going to start ramping up again. They've started preparing, going after homeowners. There's a lot of cases that are out there that have been abandoned for the last 6 months, 7 months, 8 months. And if you noticed, if you read your statutes of within your states for those procedures, for court procedures, that many of them state that if a case has been abandoned, which means been inactive for a year, that the court can dismiss it for it being abandoned. And some of those are coming up on that time, and people are waiting. Hey, why isn't the bank doing anything? Why isn't the bank doing anything? And they're just leaving it alone. Well, one day you're going to get something in the mail stating that they're reinitiating. I will tell you this, is that there's a lot of legislation or a lot of lobbying going on to try and get legislation to pass certain laws that will make it legal for them to overcome some of the problems that they're having these days. For example, with MERS, for example, with the deed of trust not being attached to the promissory note or being vacated, the mortgage agreement not being attached to the promissory note. They want to focus more on the deed of trust, and specifically the deed of trust and the mortgage agreement, as opposed to the promissory notes. And they also want to try and confer certain rights over to MERS to be able to convey interest when they actually don't have interest. And I don't care what law they create.
Like you're saying.
Well, yeah. And I don't care what law they create. What they're doing is they're essentially they're muddying the waters. Is what they're doing. They're not making just no valid law can come from it. If you're not the principal that I owe the notes or owe the debt to, then I don't care what law they create. They can't make me liable to you if I don't owe you a debt. Period. Yes. I don't care how complicated it gets. I do know also that they're trying to. A lot of lawsuits are going on between attorney generals and banks or servicers, as well as between court cases or litigation between banks and servicers and banks, suing one another for faulty paperwork, blah blah blah. And they're trying to overcome all that. I would strongly suggest that you find out where your promissory note is and who owns it. Yeah, and then make them prove that they own it. I mean, and if they come back and tell you that it's owned by an asset-backed pooling trust, then I would ask the question: well, has the pooling trust been sold to investors, or have investors bidded on that pooling trust in order to convey, in order to be, become principal? Because then at that point, how do you owe the so-called principal anything, since the investors have paid it? Now, I know some people saying, well, these investors have the right to receive their monies back, blah blah blah, because of the promises that was made to them by whatever Wall Street entity that promised a return on their funds. That's not your business. That's not you're overextending
That's
your
the
reach.
contract between them.
Exactly. All you care about is, has the principal that is claimed that claims that I owe him money, does he actually hold a position that I actually do owe him anything? And then two, if he does, has payment not been tendered? So in other words, another question is, can he be injured by you not paying him? And if he cannot be injured, he cannot initiate a suit against you. It's called a cause of action.
And that goes across the board.
Oh yeah.
I mean, when you think about it, I mean.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That actually goes across the board, because you can say that same thing in a traffic case.
A lot of us don't really pay attention, I mean, because I wonder what we really doing on the process as far as our homes when we actually taking care of the business of purchasing these homes. What are we doing? We're not going. Well, even if you do have a competent lawyer, is the lawyer actually informing you?
Well, the
when you think about it.
Yeah, the problem with competent attorneys is not just whether or not they're competent, because a competent attorney can be competent in being an attorney, because the main thing that attorneys are experts in is civil procedure. Civil procedures or court procedures, excuse me, courtroom procedures. They're not necessarily, again, we'll say this, is that when they go through law school, the constitutional law is an elective.
That's right.
There's millions of laws that are out there, so they literally do not go through all of them. They go through the principles of law.
Yes.
They go through court cases to their interpretations of the law and how to deal with court and how to be persuasive in court. But they don't necessarily deal with law directly. I know that for sure. I know that for sure because, again, when you deal with attorneys, a lot of attorneys hire legal researchers to do their work for them, do their research in the law library. Anytime I'm in the law library, hardly ever do you see attorneys in there. You see their legal researchers in there.
I'm with you. I see it all the time, brother.
So
definitely.
And it's I'm not downing attorneys or anything like that. Hey. Everybody is willing has the right to make a living, but I will tell you this: you're not required to be an attorney in order to study or even practice law. I don't care what anybody says, because there is no such thing as a license to practice law. I still am looking for someone to show me.
Smooth, genius. They genius how they put that together.
Oh yeah.
When you think about it, because they just got people out of that. Just talking to the neighbor, older gentleman, and it was funny because even the principles, what he was taught when he was in school, when he was taught actually the full Constitution, not just the preamble. You know what I'm saying?
Right, yeah,
when you have to deal with these certain elements of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, what it mean and stuff like that, you interpret it. And then he was writing even the address from Abraham Lincoln, just stuff like that.
Right.
These things don't work. These things don't happen no more in the schoolhouse. So that's why the dumbing down.
And then you bring up a great point. Schools are not built these days in order to make successful people. They are built in order to make employees.
Indeed.
This is what you're so used to. This is why when you have a certain amount of, this is why you're punished when you're tardy. If you have a certain amount of tardies, then you have an absence. If you have a certain amount of absences, then they take a grade point off, and blah blah blah, so on and so forth. This is also in school now. They have little promotional things where when I say promotional, like for example, my son's class, they try and say, okay, well, you have this job for the week, and at the end of the week, we're gonna give you a certain amount of these little play dollars, little monopoly money. And I'm like, no. I teach my son that you are not going to, you're not learning in school in order to be an employee. You're going to be one of the greatest men alive, and you're going to be your own boss. You're going to be your own master. And I show him, I don't just tell him that, but I show him that every day on how to do it. Now, are there other things that they do in order to get this? Oh yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot of things that they actually leave out as well in order to to keep that neurological programming instilled, right? And do not get this twisted. There is neurological linguistical programming that is going on with you every day. Merely look up ELF, ELF. Yeah. All right.
Subliminal messages 24/7.
Every time you turn that TV on, every time you turn that computer on, namely the TV, because we don't realize the frequencies that come from it.
Oh, brother, I got a great example. I was watching, what was I watching? I think it was Pawn Stars, and they happened to play, Bruce Lee, Enter the Dragon. They played this particular commercial, and it was a commercial where the banking, and I think it was Citibank or one of them big banks, but they basically had a guy coming up to an ATM and accept or not accept. So then he had all these subliminal messages coming at him. Just do it anyway. The banking system is good for us. And I was thinking to myself, wow, this is so cool what they've been doing. And this is literally the psychology aspect of what the people are going through today, each and every day throughout our lives.
Did you hear the little rants? There was a town hall meeting. I think we talked about it a little bit before. I couldn't remember the guy's name, but it was Joe Walsh was his name. A Tea Party congressional congressman out of, I don't remember what state, and it doesn't matter that he's Tea Party or Congress. In looking at the tape or the video, it actually showed me typically what the typical politician believes, and the reason that I know is the way that what they believe is because you can tell by their actions what people believe. Okay. He told, they were in there complaining to or talking about, it was a town hall meeting and it was in a local bar, and people were talking about, what's happened over the last several years and how the banking industry, or Wall Street and banking industry have turned the economy into a downspin. And he's like, no, it was the government. The government has been, regulating companies' business for the last 50 years into this type of depression and so on and so forth. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. So I'm continuously listening to him, and he says, anytime anybody says something to him, he tells them they're wrong, and he tells them it's the government's fault for the way that they either have been and have been regulating, and they need to stay out of the free market and blah blah blah. Then he tells this guy, so this guy's trying to make his point, and he tells him to be quiet. He says, "Be quiet." And bro, he's not just talking; he's yelling at the dude. I mean, he's screaming at him, and it's not the first guy. Matter of fact, he had to get some coffee. He had to take a break and get some coffee. And it was like, well, give him some decaf. I mean, if you look at it, all of them were saying, get him some decaf. He's too amped up. And the lady was saying, you don't have to scream at me. I'm right here. I can hear you. And she was intelligently explaining why the financiers, financial advisors, banking, and the various principles within Wall Street, how they actually did the things that they did that actually caused this, providing false information on derivatives and information like stuff like that. Getting somebody to buy him, knowing good and well he's selling his own, so on and so forth. And now they're explaining all this stuff to him, and he's yelling at them. I mean, at not quite the top of his lungs, but he's yelling at them that they don't know what they're talking about, and he's tired of these idiots being, coming forth with all this false information, and that he's telling them what's right. Now he tells this guy to be quiet, that he's talked enough, talked too long. He says, be quiet. I asked you. The guy starts to talk some more. He says, look, I said be quiet or I'm going to have to ask you to leave. I'm like, well, wait a minute. When did this politician become the boss? These people elected him to represent their will. Not to go. He didn't say. He'll say, you know what? We appreciate your message. We like what you think, so we're going to let you in office so that you can go push your will. That's not what a public official or a public servant is. Okay, a public servant expresses the will of the people that elected him. For you to tell somebody to sit down and shut up, or you're gonna kick them out, shows me that you don't realize the intricacies and the fundamental principles of this system that was created, and that you're trying to overturn it, and that's treasonous. That's treasonous actions. And that dude should be impeached.
Big time. Come on.
You know what I'm saying? And that's not just him. It's any of these guys. Any of these guys that get into office, that we elect them. You know what? Bush came in. Bush Sr. said, no new taxes. He was elected based on that. Then when he got in, he created new taxes.
Everything.
Look,
come on.
The will of the people is what he is there to do. If he promises something, an expression, or he expresses something that he will do for the people, and this is their will, and that he is put into office for that, and then he gets in and he does the total opposite, then that is traitorous actions. Because and it needs to be overturned, because remember, it is the people that run this, not the government. The government only express the will of the people. And the moment that we forget that, the moment that this is lost.
And that's what has been happening. I mean, the same issue with Obama, all these presidents, regardless. I mean, I was thinking about yesterday, because I've been following this Vietnam the Vietnam special they have in HD or whatever the case may be. But it's so sad to see these soldiers fighting for, well, they wasn't fighting for anything really, but they was fighting for the agenda of the presidents. The presidents, you got Henry Kissinger making deals over here, getting millions and millions and billions of dollars over here, doing all this unlawful things, going 16 miles in Cambodia. I mean, just stuff like killing innocent people. Literally, you killing all these innocent people. Right. Certain things that was your body count. That was the key thing to this Vietnam War, was body count. How many body counts can we win to win this certain particular place? Then they're out of the place, like a week later. Just stuff like that. And it was based on, occupying the area. Okay, we got this area. Let's set up base. Let's get things going. Now we move on to the next. But these agendas, man, is like, wow. And when you look at the 60s was the most corrupted. When you're talking like decades, the 60s was probably the most powerful decade when they usurped every aspect of the citizen, every aspect of our rights. You're killing these icons. I mean, so many icons was killed. Malcolm X. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Martin Luther King. I mean, John F. K. Bobby. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I feel you.
Edgar. I mean, it was so many people that was affected in them years, even though the people was standing up to an extent, but then at the same time in the background, this government was just taking their stuff, just taking, Johnson and Nixon. I mean, they were so corrupted.
And to be honest with you, you want a real step for a solution, and that is to create an amendment to the Constitution that defines what a person is, and do not define a person as a corporation. The moment you do that, you say, look, a person is someone that is living and breathing, et cetera, sentient being, however it is that you want to explain it. We get our minds, our intellectual minds together, and spiritual minds together, and explain or define what a person is, and the corporation's rights would be taken away. It would be stripped. Because what happened is they took and hijacked the 14th Amendment as their own. The 14th Amendment, as we know, was created so that people that were formerly in slavery could sue and obtain recourse for a violation of rights. And the corporations went in and got themselves defined as a person and got protected as such. And the corporations are not person. They're not a person. They're not persons. They're not persons. They are a group of people that perform certain things. But the minute that you give that group of people a protection that any individual doesn't have, which is what a corporation status does, it provides certain legal protections, whether it's tax or otherwise. The moment that it does that, and it takes them from being considered one of the people. So. Again, a corporation in itself is merely a group of people, but they're given a certain protection that doesn't allow them to fit the same mold of people, so they have to get redefined. But unfortunately, we've allowed them to redefine themselves, I should say, excuse me.
And that's what happened,
We've allowed attorneys to go in with smooth tongues, silver tongues and smooth mouths, and go into courts and define them, get them defined as persons. And then they are attributed certain privileges, and the line has been blurred between the distinguishment of privileges and rights. And you have to realize you don't have privileges when it comes to life and liberty and and food and water and things of that nature. But yet, let me give you a direct example. You have a right to life. One of the things that's essential to life is you drinking water, eating certain foods. But if you don't drink water, then you will die of dehydration. Now, corporations can own water and now charge you for it. There's a conflict there. So in 2035, they're estimating that in 2035 that all the drinkable water is going to be owned by some corporation. Well, wait a minute. If I have a right to life, right, and water is required for my right to life, who allow this corporation to step in and own it so that they can sell it to me? How are you going to sell me a right? They're trying to buy. They're not trying. They're doing it. They're buying up air.
Buying up air and got the narrative. It'd be just like Total Recall.
Oh yeah,
we
got to think about this.
Even though it was Mars,
and that's the thing.
Yeah,
we're not thinking on that level. We have to think on that level. And if you
and it's always in our face.
Yeah,
I mean, literally.
But we so much want to defend what we believe to be a free market, and we don't comprehend what a free market is. We really don't. We don't comprehend what a free market is.
Free enterprise.
And that's, what we're defending now is not a free market. What we're defending is corporatocracy.
That's what it is, and you are on point on that point. Because I mean, when they founded this, when they discovered America, that's what it was based on: free enterprise. You know, at that time, not
well,
this
I think you
had
it right the first time when they founded America, because you can't discover something that somebody else already owns or has, possesses. I mean, can I discover your hat if you're in it? I mean, I don't want to get into that. You know, to be honest with you, and I'm not going to make any mince about it. This country was taking on war powers for the most part. Okay,
just like any other part.
Yeah, so. Okay, well, we are where we are. We're gonna, are the natives gonna come back and take it? No, they're not trying to do that. They've made a niche of what they want to do and how they want to live and interact with society. So be it. We can only concern ourselves with injustices from here on out. We can't undo what's already been done in the past. So, and in that case, the country was founded on certain principles. With certain ideals, and yes, certain people were excluded at the time, but I always say, when you know better, do better.
Exactly. Yeah, and stop blaming. That's the problem too. We always blaming somebody else, and it's our,
close that door,
you know what I'm saying? It's our responsibility. We got to take more responsibility, instead of blaming everybody, and we tend to do that a lot. Now it's everybody. Oh, I'm blaming you for this. I'm blaming you for this. Here's the good one. I'm blaming Obama. He said he was going to do this. He said he was going to get this done. Come on, folks. We got to understand that this is a puppet, just like the rest of these presidents.
Yeah. And to be honest with you, even if he wasn't, it's not a lot of what people are asking him to do is not his job. I mean, Are you serious? You're trying to say that it's the president's job to create more jobs?
I know.
It's not. It is not the president's job to create more jobs, and I don't want them to create more jobs. To be honest with you, I want them to teach children in school how to make their own business, how to make their own living. And if you want to go work for someone else, these are the things that you should do and look for, and how to negotiate your salaries and stuff like that. I mean, we're teaching them about some nonsensical. We're teaching them about. We make it a big point to study history or to teach them about history when 2/3 of history is actually classified.
Come on, brother.
So we can't teach them that anyway. You know what I'm saying?
Indeed. Columbus sailed the blue. That's all they know.
And again, I don't want to go into the problems that we face. Let's go into solutions. And again, one of the main solutions I honestly think, I don't want to just gloss over that, is that I think there should be an amendment either put into the U.S. Constitution and or all state constitutions, however people so will, to recognize what a person is.
Yes, indeed.
What the people are. Because if you honestly go by what it was created, what the U.S. Constitution and Declaration of Independence was created for, it said all men are created equal. It was talking about European men. It didn't say that, but it was talking about European men.
Indeed,
it talked about the rights of the people. Well, it talked about the rights of the people were
the minority, the male, the white male was the minority.
Yeah, European men. Well, let's be realistic about this. People are people are people are people.
Indeed.
Period. I'm one of the people. You're one of the people, regardless of your persuasion, regardless of your status, so on and so forth. That's it. Period. When you know better, do better. Now, if people can't recognize that and don't want to get on board, then that's when you have division. And we have division in this country. We have all kinds of divisions. We got, the poor people, the lazy people on welfare are causing this problem. You know what? That's not true. Obama caused this problem. That's not true. Bush caused this problem. That's not true either. I know as much. I know a lot of people don't like. Look, the bottom line is this: the truth is not popular. You want to know who caused the problems that we are in? Everyone listening to this. Every voice you hear, everyone that's hearing my voice, we are the reason that this is happening, because we are divided and we're being conquered.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah, no doubt.
Every nation is fallen. Every nation is fallen. There's matter of fact, there is no nation. There are no nations anymore. There are corporations.
No.
There are corporations. Nations are falling from here to there, everywhere. When we talked about commerce, and correct me if you can remember that the Sovereign Immunities Act, the specific code again, 711. It's 7011. I forget the title. But when it says that,
26
USC 7011 says essentially that every entity or foreign nation that gets into commerce waives their right to immunity. Well, every nation now is turning into a corporation, which is commerce. So is everybody waiving their immunity? Well, guess who they're waiving their immunity to? Well, who is the primary central group within the hierarchy? If you really look at it, it's the UN.
Yes, that's
and
who
then who funds the UN, or who directs the UN? Is it the IMF? Is it or is the Vatican, Rome? I mean, who is it?
The Pope, man, the Pope. Everything we blame the Pope.
You know what I'm saying? So we got to get to the point where, okay, fine. Even if we don't want to find those specific answers, we got to find solutions to disassociate ourselves from that, so that we can maintain our autonomy or sovereignty, if you want to call it.
That's 28. Correction, 28 USC.
28 USC 711.
USC. No, that's we're talking. He says.
I think you're right the first
28.
time.
1605, wasn't it? 1605.
No, that's trade and business. That's a trade or business.
No, that's immunity. No, that's immunities.
Oh, so I have it reversed. Okay.
My bad. Yeah.
Forgive me. I have it
26
reversed.
USC is 7701. That's the trade
or business. Okay. Trade or business is a function of a public office. Okay, that's 26 USC 711. So what I was just talking about, the sovereign immunities, is 28 USC 1605.
16. Yes.
Okay, I get the numbers right.
And we stated, and the cool thing, and let me just put this out there, as far as you can go listen to our podcast. We definitely on point when we talking about these codes, because we got a lot of codes going to the head. So forgive us for that side of it. But at the same time, you can.
I'm not gonna ask. I mean, hey, do your own research.
But you know what I'm saying.
Yeah,
if they doing their research, they're gonna find what they're gonna.
Right, I get you.
I just want to, go back to the previous podcasts, and you'll get it. I mean,
right now, and also saying that I don't want to be the one to provide misinformation or disinformation. Okay,
that's my point. That's why I said.
No, I feel you. But it is our own responsibility. We want to make sure that and that's the exact reason, is because we may have the best of intentions, but if we accidentally give you something, call us on it, or say, hey, it wasn't here, but it was here. Okay, I'll correct it. Forgive me. Didn't mean to mislead you.
And that's one thing why we stand out a lot too. I want to put this out there, because the Ted Turners, the Tim Turners, I'm sorry, and the Winston Strouts and yada yada yada. That's the difference. Because we'll come out with, if we made a mistake, hey, this is what we're doing. We're not trying to misinform the people. We're not here for that. It's about being straight up, letting you know what's going on, but do your own research. That's the key element. Well, we challenge you to do your own research, because then you'll find it for yourself. Look at it for yourself.
Yeah, indeed, that's true. So yeah, man, I don't know what timeline we're at, but I think we're pretty close with this one. So if you wanna add some final thoughts,
I just like I would always say, just kind of, we need to start being responsible for our actions.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's where it comes down. I mean, just like you were saying, I mean, the title of this is Fear is a Disease, a dis-ease. That's what it is. Until we start learning about that dis-ease, then you don't have the fear. Or when you can create the cure, you know what I'm saying? Because the cure is there, the solution is there.
Well,
we just got to take
you
it
are
at
the cure.
Yeah, indeed.
If you're listening to this, you are the cure. You really are. But you are also
tell
the problem.
The next man.
Huh?
You know, I said, tell your fellow man, tell your fellow woman, hey, listen to these brothers. They got something to say.
And even if you don't, you express it. Shoot.
Indeed. Because you got to live it. That's the key thing. Like I was explaining to my cousin, I mean, the only example is you being the example. Mm-hmm. You got to play that role. You know what I'm saying?
Indeed.
Especially for your son or your daughter, whatever the case may be. You got to show them, okay, well, I'm a big reader. I'm this. I'm boom, boom, boom. Whatever the case may be, you know. But you gotta do it. You gotta be it.
Right.
For that example, you know.
Indeed, that is true.
Yeah. On that note, anything you want?
No, man. I just want people to realize that, you know, you are your master. You know.
Indeed.
I know people always continuously put it off on someone else. I had someone recently tell me I'm not religious, I'm spiritual, but in another part of the conversation it was that if it ain't in the Bible it's not true. And I'm like, you know, everything in life, everything in the universe is not included in that book. It's not big enough. It cannot be included. Everything in the universe cannot be included in it. Mm-hmm. It is virtually impossible. So there are going to be things that, whether regardless of what you hold it to be, it is not there. Okay.
Indeed.
You know, other than that, I don't. The bottom line is we have to recognize that you are your master, and even if you believe in a Yahshua, if you believe in a Muhammad.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.